Sorry, I didn't add it to the stream. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna. Welcome to the channel. Hopefully all is well. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know whether or not you could hear me in the chat, and then we could go ahead and get started with this discussion, of which I'm going to open up the floor um, once I finish sharing my thoughts. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I'm trying to access it so I don't go through the whole thing without anybody hearing me. Yeah. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I'm trying to we can be heard. We can be heard. We can be heard. Greetings and welcome back once again. Shout out to all the new subscribers and shout out to the day one subscribers. For the new subscribers, this is a little different. Amuna does it a little different just because my brain works a little different over here. Even when I'm sharing stuff like on 90 Day Fiance or Seeking Sister Wives, I always have an angle, and my angle is to get a deeper understanding of what's going on, right? It's easy to do something topical. It's easy to repeat what we've heard, parrot information, but it's not so easy to get the information, process the information, and kind of grasp it in a certain way. So that's what I do over here, and that's what it takes a little bit longer. I can be heard. Thank you, sweetie. So I put up a video early today, and hopefully you saw it, that had to do with, I called into a show. When I called into the show, even though the title said debate, I was like, no, I don't see anything here to debate because we haven't clearly stated our points. And so I'd be scared to speak respectfully to the host of the show, right? And sharing my concerns about why this necessarily doesn't constitute being a debate, right? It should be a discussion. And so he began to clarify some points for me. And I made some points, and I shared my thoughts on the baby got back thing. By the way, YouTube took it down. I'm gonna have to put it back up there. I'm gonna redo it. But I shared my thoughts on overall how the we were talking about accountability, but the issue that I had, and oftentimes I have, is that if we are now going to do a concentrated subject, right, where other people are involved, then it helps to stay on topic. If it's concentrated, if it's not me just free flowing or the person just free flowing, it helps to stay on topic. Because when we jump, like in that conversation, he jumped from single mother statistics to abortion, to birth control, to obesity. And I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, we all over the place, right? And what that does is they call it moving the goalpost. It's a logical fallacy. And oftentimes when people are presented with these logical fallacies, we're going to pull it up and define it, right? What happens is people think, oh, like, oh, you're winning. You're winning. You know what I mean? The person is winning. Ooh, we like it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And it's like, wait a minute, you're not willing. You're not winning. Here's logical fallacy. Moving the goalpost is an informal fallacy in which evidence presented in response to a specific claim is dismissed, and some other, often greater evidence is demanded. That is, after an attempt has been made to score a goal, the goalposts are moved to exclude the attempt. And that was what was happening when you ask one question and then you address that, then, oh, we run down the lane. And then I'm like, come on, we don't play those games. We don't play those games because I'm not really here for sport. You understand what I'm saying? This is not for sport. This is something that we and I have invested time, energy, and effort to. And you really want to see the healing of people, period. And in order for us to heal, we have to be honest, right? We can't have any hidden agendas. So if I have a hidden agenda and I'm presenting like I want unity, my action is going to show that in truth, I really don't want unity. And so what I received from the brother, that is in truth, even though you were verbalizing that you wanted unity, when he decided to put up my video on his side, he misrepresented what I was saying. And I was like, the issue comes in with trust. If we the people, period, people in general, your workplace, your family, wherever, if there is a lack of trust and we can't trust one another, then we can't unify, we can't build, because we're always going to be second guessing whether or not that person or this people group has our best interest in mind. So with that said, true to form, we're going to go over accountability, because in the comment section, which I did hop in, right? I'm just giving you guys a backstory. In the comment section, I asked for the word to be defined. And one of the problems that I run into over many years of hosting, this is what people You may see me on YouTube, but I've been in many spaces. So I'm not really new to having difficult discussions. What I find is that it alleviates stress, even in your household. If you're having arguments with your mate, with your whoever, define terms. It really helps. So I simply ask for the term to be defined. And maybe it feels like, oh, Mona's being facetious. No, I know that once we have a baseline term defined, then we are not fighting over the invisible concepts that are in our heads. We can actually bring it down and materialize it and say, this is the foundation upon which we're standing. I know that's too much for people who like to be emotionally titillated, right? People who like to be like, oh, I have to, I have to spark you up for your emotions for you to be engaged. But that's part of the problem. So with that said, I'm gonna share my screen, and we're just gonna just for general knowledge go over accountability. I was told that I was pretending like I didn't know what accountability meant. I'm like, I want us all to agree upon something before we can go forward. If we find the points that we can agree upon, and if you watch the video, I just kept trying to get points that we agree upon, so we kind of knew where we differed. It doesn't make sense to argue. You could be arguing the same point. It's a waste of time. You could tell I've argued with a lot of people back in the day. I try not to be so argumentative these days, but I'm fighting against the old man. Anyway, let me share this screen really quickly, and then prepare your thoughts because I'm going to ask to see who would like to come up. Okay, let's see. I have a number of things up here, so let's go to accountability. Oh no, I don't want to share my whole screen. Hopefully, no. Did I want to share my whole screen? Hold on one second. I thought I wanted to do it. Tell me what you guys are seeing. Let me see it over here. I want to be able to put my thing over here and share the screen over here. So let me try again. Share the screen. Window. No. Just that. I don't know. I think it's going to take over my whole screen, but I'm not going to waste much time on trying to do this text stuff. Uh-oh. Where did I put it? Come back to me. Come back to me. It's the whole screen? No problem. Hey, LF, what's going on? We're going to go with the whole screen. Okay? So accountable. I asked for to define accountability. We know ability is the suffix on the word accountable, right? So accountable means to explain, justify, and take responsibility. I'm writing it down. You already know. Because when you write it down, it kind of sticks better. And take responsibility for one's actions. Right? Usually we jump to the taking responsibility for one's actions. And on both sides, male and female, especially if we're trying to hold the other sex or the other gender responsible, we don't want to hear them explain. We don't want to hear them justify. We only want to hear them take responsibility. But in the very word, it means you're obligated, the person, like, who's responsible for this? You want somebody to come and explain to you. If you come into the house and your children are there and you see juice all over the floor, the first thing you want to know is who is responsible for this? Explain this. How did this get here? If it sounds like I can relate, I go through this every single day. And then when they show up to you, if you're a good listener, you want them to now explain how this happened. So accountability doesn't just come with taking responsibilities for one's action. Explain or justify. Let me know. Paint the picture for me. What happened? Right? And to go on, if somebody's saying, I'm going to read the rest of it, and to answer to someone, such as a person with more authority. That's very interesting and very important. And to answer to someone, such as a person with more authority. In the realm of people of men, who have the thought process that they have more authority than the woman, the question is, the thought process is that the man can hold the woman responsible, but the woman cannot hold the man responsible because he has more authority. I'll say that again. In some spaces, we run into issues with accountability because the thought process is the man, such a person with more authority, the man has more authority, therefore he can hold the woman responsible, but she cannot hold him responsible. Keep that one in mind. Please keep that one in mind, right? The word accountable is often used in the context of individuals taking responsibility for their actions. And this one is from dictionary.com. It says it's often used. So, what is the popular culture? How is it often used? That doesn't mean that the other parts of the definition doesn't apply. It just means that in popular culture, people usually say take responsibility and they interchange responsibility with being accountable. But as we see, the word account, which I'm going to look up next, has to do with a record or of debit, entries to cover like your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, a statement. That's in one part of the term. In the second part of the definition, a statement explaining one's conduct, a statement of exposition of reasons, causes, or motives, a reason for an action, the basis. So when somebody's given an account, it's similar to a story. Or when you go to the courthouse and they're like, his account was, this is the person. So in that person's account, male or female, they have the right to narrate their account. One of the contentions that the brother had, and I'm still trying to respect and say brother, one of his contentions is that when he was trying to hold the woman accountable, I had the nerve to include in my account the male. And the thought process is you're blaming. The reality is, if one is going to have an account, all of the factors, all of the parties that went into how you got to wherever you got to that are involved in your story have to be mentioned. If you leave out certain parties, when you go and say, oh, something happened, and then, they run up on you, the popo run up on you, and they ask you for your account. If you leave out other people or key details in your story, you gave an inaccurate account. So when we're talking about, namely, highly triggering situations in the community, people get offended quickly when you or anyone, male or female, involves the other party because it looks like an attempt to shift blame. Let me know if you guys can still hear me. It looks like an attempt to shift blame and not, quote, take responsibility. But that's not always the case because, again, I was accused of playing with words. But no, if we are going to have a conversation which is full of words, it helps to define it and for us to understand how the one person is using it and how the other person is using it, right? So that was my thought on account. Okay. It comes with what? Let me write this down again. Account comes with explaining one's conduct, right? A statement of exposition of reasons, causes, and motives. And we're going to go into a biblical story that gives us reasons, causes, and motives. And it's one of, even if you don't subscribe to the Bible, it's one that many, many people always reference to. So I have that up here as well. Hopefully, we're getting somewhere with this thought about being accountable and what it entails, and why, when people try to paint you into boxes, it's not helpful and it doesn't lead to anywhere because they're not allowing the person to fully explain their position before they jump on it. And part of that is because they already have a predetermined thought. If you come to a discussion and you have a predetermined thought, there's no opening for you to grow. There's no opening for you to learn. You're not having a discussion. You're literally only trying to debate. Okay. And on YouTube or on the internet, if I put a video up, like the video I put up about did Ashley just admit to witchcraft? If I put someone's name in the title, I take that very seriously. You are going to bet that it's not clickbait. When you click on that, I have already done the research and this is what this person is saying. If I'm talking about my thoughts or my theories, that's different. But if I'm going to implicate somebody or try to hold them accountable for what they have said, you can bet your bottom dollar that they said it, as opposed to what the brother was doing, which was clickbaiting people and putting in there something that I did not say, and at the same time not want to be held accountable for the fact that you misrepresented someone, right? And this is Wikipedia, which, you take with a grain of salt because sometimes Wikipedia does have good sources. I think and other times anybody can kind of edit it. I think the best value for me is some of the research, but when you jump down here, the best value for me in Wikipedia, if you want to go over what they have presented, is the footnote section, because here is where all of the sources lie, right? And this footnote section is deep. So you see that they were accountable. They're holding themselves accountable, or Wikipedia is holding them accountable for what they're putting. 108 citations in this here article, each of which you can go and look. You have the ISBN numbers. When I ask people for where did you get that number? Where did you get that source? For some reason, in some communities, it's like an offense, because now we get to pull it down from the theory world into reality, and it holds us to what we're saying, and people don't like that. See, if I can shadow box with you, then we can go in circular reasoning and arguments all day long. But if we could pull it down into reality, it's no longer alluring. Let me make sure this thing is on. I'll go to the whole. Because lately I haven't been having. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So let's continue. So when I'm asking for this type, we each have different ways in which we communicate. I have learned over the years that if somebody has a slanted viewpoint, the chances are that what they're not going to want to show you where they're getting it from, A, and B, they're going to be offended if you double back or go behind them and verify their sources. I don't know why, because when you go look for a job, they want to verify what you have said. So they call your references. You see how that works in the real world? Mm-hmm. So let me just go back up here as it relates to the etymology of the word accountability. But let me just read a little bit. Accountability in terms of ethics and governance is equated with answerability, blameworthiness, liability, and the expectation of account giving. All of these different things. Ethics, accountable to what? A religious system, a spiritual system, a higher power, society. What are you being held accountable to? That's why I asked for a baseline standard when we're talking about whatever it is we're talking about. Because if you don't have that established, what are you holding them up to? To what? There was nothing established. There's no law. There's no statutes. There's no morals. There's no expectations. I'm going to jump down here. You can definitely read this at your own leisure. History and etymology of the word, which is also very important. Accountability stems from the late Latin accomptare, to account, a prefix form of computor, like to calculate. That means you have to add up things. That means you have to have different elements to account for something. It can't just be one person. For instance, I took objection because in this particular situation, you are trying to account for single motherhood, which we're going to go into, but one of the key components cannot be mentioned. I'm sorry, I'm trying. It's late, y'all. It's been a long day, but I find that entertaining. How are we going to account for single motherhood when one of the key components in the equation cannot be mentioned? It doesn't work. While the word itself does not appear in English until its use in the 13th century Norman England, the concept of account giving has ancient roots in record keeping activities related to governance and money lending systems that first developed in ancient Egypt, Israel, Babylon, Greece, and later Rome. Okay, so we see if somebody says be accountable, there are many ways we can go, but we have to say for what? To whom? What is the standard? What are we being? What are we being held to? And then if they say, well, what's the story? How did you arrive here? Then you should be given the ability to recount the story. That's why I say, if you can recount the details, recount the story. The story has to be whole. It cannot be a half story. And anybody that's trying to pigeonhole you is being disingenuous. But let's continue. Let us continue. That was my thoughts there. We did accountable. How's it going so far, everybody? Let me jump over here. Let me release my screen for 1 second. Un momento. Wait a minute. Has my screen been released the whole time? Are you guys there? Have my screen been released? Have you guys been seeing or only hearing the screen? This thing is tripping. Let me see. Let me share my screen again. Let me share my screen again. Before we get into single mothers, because we're going to touch that a little bit today. And then I'm going to open the floor, right? Let's go to the number one story that even people who don't believe the Bible go into, which is the book of Genesis. Something happens, right? Something happens. We're going to read what happens. Everybody goes here because the woman ate the apple, right? And they're trying to give an account or recount what the details of the story. But let's see how accounting goes. Um, Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Creator had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, have the Creator said, or God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God, or God have said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. There's a whole conversation going on, right? And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God do know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them were both open, and and they knew that they were naked. This is giving an account, okay, of what the writer said happened. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. And they heard the voice of the Creator walking. I don't like saying Lord, so y'all work with me. In the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Creator amongst the trees of the garden. And the Creator called unto Adam and said unto them, Where you at? Or where art thou? And he said, so he's asking now a question. And he said, 10, Adam is given an account. He said, Where are you? And he's accounting for where he is. And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told you that you were naked? Has you eaten of the tree whereof I commanded you that you shall not eat? And the man said, The woman who you have given to me, with me, she gave me the tree and I did eat. He's giving an account of what he just experienced. Now, many of us, and myself included, over the years, is like, yo, off the rip, he blames her. But as we were revisiting the definition of account, he's accounting for everybody, all of the characters who were in the story who contributed to the outcome, right? And now, after getting Adam's account, the Creator looks to Eve, or the woman, and the woman, and the Most High said unto the woman, What is this that you have done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. So something happens. What happened? One person, they give their account. They're being held accountable. Let me go back, explaining, justifying, and not necessarily taking responsibility, but he did explain and justify his actions. Next person who was there, what happened? Do you notice each time it says what happened? That's asking the person to give an account. The last entity that was there, the serpent, and the Creator said unto the serpent, Because you have done this, you are cursed above all the cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly should go, and thus shall you eat for all your days. My point being, and even if we look closer, the serpent wasn't asked what he did. He didn't get an opportunity to give his account, but Adam and Eve, or the man and the woman, gave their account. Why did I go over that? Because everybody knows the story for the most part, but here we're seeing that they were being held accountable or given an opportunity to share what happened in their estimation. We read, explain, or justify one's conduct, give reasons or cause and motives. He gave a cause, a motive, and a reason. Adam actually gives the fullest account. He says, he says, let me go back. Let me reread what Adam said. He said, um, he said, the woman who you gave to me, right? She gave me, and I did eat. He gave it a reason. He explained it. And then he even implicated the Creator by saying, It was the woman you gave to me. My point is, I don't want to go all the way in there, but my point being that accountability doesn't just only look like taking responsibility, which it should entail, and which in this case, Adam didn't necessarily take responsibility. He explained the story. He tried to justify the story. He gave reasons for his conduct, but he didn't take responsibility for why he did what he did. He just told us He gave an account for why he did what he did, but he didn't take responsibility. Oftentimes, in even present day, we hear people give an account, like the officer Chauvin when he's called to court to give an account to what he did concerning George Floyd, or the guy. What was the name of the other man? All of these people who do injustices, they're brought into court to give an account. It doesn't necessarily mean because they gave the account that they took responsibility for what they did, but they're telling the story and giving us explanations of their conduct and reasons. It becomes difficult when we're asking somebody about something, but we have already concluded in our minds that they're guilty. So we don't want to hear you justify. We as a people don't want to hear you explain. We just want to hear you take responsibility. But maybe we should use another word. Maybe we should use the word responsible. Yeah. For those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. I'm going to bring you up to the um, I'm going to bring you up to the discussion as we continue. As a matter of fact, let me see if any we have someone who Lamine is in the chat, so I'm gonna bring him forward to share his thoughts before I go on.
Hello?
Yeah, welcome to the conversation.
You hear me? Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
So I'm excellent. I'm a little bit late on the conversation. I'm at work right now, so I'm like in and out. So I'm not sure exactly what you was just talking about, but um, the part about defining what you started out with, like that's
Mm-hmm.
so important, and I'm realizing that more and more now. I remember you saying this a long time ago, and I don't know. I kind of thought like, oh yeah, that's a good thing, but now I'm seeing more of the importance of it. Like the other day, my mom she saw well she learned the Hebrew translation. Like she always laughs whenever she hears the Hebrew the actual pronunciation of certain names that we say in the Torah. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
she was cracking up about the name Samson. She heard a Jewish man call it Shimshon, so she was laughing about that. And she went to my dad and she was like, do you know the Hebrew meaning? I mean the Hebrew pronunciation of Samson, or Samson, excuse me. And then my dad was like, Samsung. And then she was like, no, why would it be? She was like, why would it be that in Hebrew? And he was like, what you mean? It's English. And then I was like, hold on a second. You guys are, I don't think you guys are disagreeing with one another. You guys
Mm-hmm.
are arguing two different things right now. And I was like, what are you trying to say, Mama? And she was like, Samson from the Bible. His Hebrew name is Shimshon. And I was like, oh, okay. What were you saying, Papa? And he was like, oh, I thought you were saying Samsung, like the manufacturer of the TV. And I was like, see, y'all
Right.
not even arguing. And they were like, oh, okay. They just walked away from each other. But they was about to start going in, like, wait, what are you talking about? And another thing like people like it's funny that those people in the comment section was like, well, of course you know what accountability means, right? Where because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people assume things, but I just
Mm-hmm.
been recently looking at this is way off tangent and stuff about what you was talking about, but anyways, I've been recently looking at like legal ideas, right? And the legal
Mm-hmm.
world, the words we use have a way different meaning. You know, it
Yep.
seems like it's English, but it's not
Yep.
though, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
the word person also applies to like Walmart. And I would never refer to Walmart as a person, but a corporation is a person in the legal
It
sense,
is. Yep.
right? Or the word must, right? Like if something in a contract says you so and so must do this, that actually means may, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
if we work on assumptions, we can end up in the wrong place and actually harming ourselves or just
I
never
agree.
understanding completely.
I agree. That's a whole nother world. Like you said, legalese. That's what they say. It's a whole nother language. When you look at the
Hmm.
Black's Law Dictionary and you look up some of the definition to these words and you look at what
Hmm.
you're using and you look at why they say that you need a lawyer to represent you in court, because to a certain degree, they classify you as basically to the degree of a child. Like you
Yeah.
can't interface in this world because you don't understand the language. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important even in our, like you said, in our daily lives. Why debate when you can discuss, if we
Yeah.
are just willing to humble ourselves and have a discussion, right?
See, you already knew what's up. You was like in the Black's Law Dictionary. I wasn't about to go all the way in like
Yeah,
that, but you
yeah,
already
we
know
went
what's
there.
up. Yeah, yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. What else would you like to add? I was just going over the definition um of accountability, because
Hmm.
oftentimes, like the brothers was telling me, you know what it means. That doesn't work for us, right? We need to define and see what we agree on, what we disagree on, and work from there, right? And game that none of our name, I mean, we may be named Webster, but we didn't write the dictionary. It
Yeah.
behooves us to use something that we have in common and then lay the foundation to the conversation instead of just ooh, and all this stuff. Where are we going with
Yeah.
that? How is that?
And apparently we don't know the meaning of accountability if we're only holding one person accountable. You know what I mean? Like if it's not all the way equal around, if I'm just be like, oh yeah, you know, you drive in the car, so you supposed to be on the lookout, but I'm just gonna be in the passenger seat drinking and just
Right,
listening to music, but you supposed to protect both of us. You know what I
right,
mean? Like that's not really both of us being accountable, but I don't
right.
know. It's a
I mean, I
it's
agree. There's so many situations that unless you unless you're on the road by yourself, if you get into a fender bender with somebody, they're gonna get the account of both people there.
yeah.
Right? You can't be like, yeah, don't talk about me. I was there, but you only talk about yourself. It's like, what? If you don't give me
Yeah.
your insurance,
Yeah. That's
you
funny.
don't get to do that in the real world. But somehow in the YouTube universe, you get to hold a whole person accountable when it takes two people to engage in certain type of behavior, right? Two
Yeah.
people to bring forth child, but only don't talk about the other person. They wasn't even there. It's like, what? What are
Mhm.
we talking about here? So
All right,
definitely.
that's all I really want to add. I'm still at work right now, so I gotta focus. I
All
gotta
right.
focus on the road right now, so I don't end up having some accounts right now. So
Yeah, look now. Thank you so much, Lamine. Thank you
yeah,
for calling
thank you for
in.
having me on.
We'll look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, for sure.
All right. All right. We have Naisha on the panel as well, so I'm gonna let you come in. Welcome to the discussion.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm fine. Honor and privilege, Queen Muna, to be here on your show.
Thank you for coming in. I'm humbled to have you here. How are you?
I'm fine. I just had some, just some couple of questions. What I found also very interesting was also, you know, not the deeper question of why, if Black women are so openly with our legs, why is this happening? We somehow reject the molestation that's going on in our community, and the
Correct.
mental issues Black women have.
Correct.
There is a deep also, of rape in the community that's is not talked about, and I just wish our men could be more open, to some of those, our concern, and also about pain. I mean, we like talking about white men, but we never really talk about Black men community when it concern in the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we never talk about, you know, even women, knowingly submitting to men, even if they don't feel like it. That somehow intimacy is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there was this speech I heard of last time on the Red Table Talk where they're talking about having intercourse, but somehow not wanting it, but then end up doing it, even in marriage. This
Mm.
this green lie, this gray lie. So even women in those ages have problems, with their own bodies, and I think that should be talked about.
I agree.
Yeah, that's all what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Naisha calling from across the pond. Your voice is appreciated, and you do bring up some very important points that we need to be accountable for. We need this conversation to be had. And what I experienced over the years is discussing. I don't mind. I talk about things that are hard to talk about, and even in the recent discussion when I bring up abortion because it's so unsettling, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't want to talk about that. And it's like, wait a minute, we have to talk about these things because one thing you cannot separate from the other. You have to talk about molestation because the same people, like you said, who oftentimes you are molested by or violated by somebody you know, right? So that means that this is somebody who's in the community. That means it's somebody who knows your family. And so to pretend as though this doesn't exist and then skip down the road to why, why we should talk about the weave you're wearing or the XYZ, all of these very superficial things, but unwilling to talk about the real things is part of the problem.
Yes, and I liked it so much when you talk about abortion. Somehow they want this favor, of having sex, but not the abortion. Now this is your business. And I liked it so much when you ask him the question, what about men who drive their wives, or their
Yes,
girlfriends to
yes,
those clinics?
yes.
And
Drive them
most,
and pay for it.
oh God,
Tell them I'm going to
yeah,
pay for it and I'm going to drive you over there and I'm going to wait in the car and I'm going to make sure that you do this thing. Right. But we don't want to talk about that because then that's going to make somebody uncomfortable, you know, and we can't heal unless we go through these uncomfortable spaces. So,
yes. But I want to ask one question before I let you go. But I know in some cultures, in some communities, men are allowed to express themselves. You know, they have
yes,
women who are in those positions, who can be used for that, for their men, until they are in a certain age where they can get married. I know in some of the countries where I come from, men have women that can used for
oh,
their,
wow,
yes. But people say men have a higher, men, both of the testosterone, you know, men have a stronger will of wanting sex. And if this is true, then my question is, how then are we going to function in a community? Which kind of woman are we going to use for that? You know, if we say this is how men are, then who is ready to give their daughter away for that, for those positions?
that's some
People
good
say,
questions.
yes.
We got,
People say to me, yes. People say, yeah, China, they have the concubines and all of this stuff. In the ancient Africa, I say yes, but now it's different. We live under certain kind of systems, and I don't trust women to do that. We are so unsure. I am unsure.
we
So I don't know.
we should definitely come back and have that discussion. I think I've discussed about concubines over the years, pelageshes as they're called in the scriptures, and just looking at different ways that in antiquity, which is what a lot of people are trying to bring back, people were treated, and whether or not it was beneficial to the society or whether or not it caused more harm than good. So I think that's definitely a discussion that we can discuss going forward.
Thank you so much, Mama.
Thank you so much for calling and take care of yourself, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. We have T Dawn in the building. Let's hear her thoughts. And you're on, sis.
Thank you so much, Sister Amona. I just wanted to bring up one thing that I heard from your an earlier video earlier today. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that the person that you were speaking with said. He seemed to say that men were improving, and I really
Mm.
wanted to ask the question, what metric was he using?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really wanted to ask. And also, I just thought it was such a revealing question when you asked about what is the purpose of uh, the idea of sex. Is it for procreation?
Right.
What are we trying to do here? And then I
Right.
just wanted to bring up one more point: leveling up. That is a term that I have heard a very specific YouTuber. It was a set of YouTubers use when they're talking to men, and they want them to level up. And my thought process again is: are they leveling up so they can? It seems like they're leveling up so they can achieve the type of women, and it's not a singular woman that they're after, it's women.
Right.
And so I'm just again wondering, are they trying to level up so they can have a legacy with a woman, or what is the goal of leveling up, and why would women want to trust a person when they come to them with that mindset? And so that's really all I wanted to ask, and ask for your thoughts. And I would like to take them off air if that's okay.
No problem, no problem. And yeah, I agree that the trust factor is one that is um oftentimes I think men do not really understand the value or the reason why it becomes an issue to work collaboratively if the woman doesn't trust them, right? Because in order to be vulnerable, in order to get into this submissive space, you have to be able to trust. So I think there's like different conversations that are happening. And remind me of the question because I was listening and processing, and I may be a little bit off. So if I'm not fully answering the question, then feel free to drop it in the box or come back on. But y'all know what happens when it gets late. I know what happens. Like I'm talking, and then the train just be like, whoop. Um, but concerning the trust issue and the question about what is the purpose of sex, I even asked it on my Facebook page. I tend to love to do community conversations because that's another place that I wanted us to be able to either touch and agree or get more understanding of, right? And in this area, he's saying that he would say to his daughters to warn them either to take birth control, meaning, like I said, when on live, either you're going to take responsibility for someone else's action, right? Because they're going to go into this act and then you're supposed to catch the ball. You're supposed to contracept, right? Go against conception. You're supposed to go against nature so that you can block the end result. So it's like if you're telling somebody to go against nature, to go against their better judgment on your behalf, and if something happens, they get to blame you, that erodes the trust factor, right? That erodes the trust factor. If you tell your young daughter that if you go outside, beware of this person and beware of that person, and the persons that you're referring to are men, you're telling your daughter you cannot trust men. This is why I say to him, to the way in which you guys are approaching, in my estimation, this conversation is backwards. Because as I got him to agree that the man is the one who's pursuing it, that means his pursuit is off. His pursuit is off key. His pursuit is off. Do you go and y'all know I like analogies, and T Don, tell me if I'm off, but if you drive past, I live a place where there's a lot of land, right? How many land parcels that you don't own? Would I look like a crazy person if I bought heirloom seeds off of the internet, right? And I just went around every land parcel that I thought was good, that got sun in the morning, and it was a good position. I just start planting my heirloom seeds all on these people. You be like, Mona, are you crazy? Why are you just going around planting seeds? This is the thought process that men are not understanding, that you're just going around planting seeds whatever suits your fancy in wherever you desire. And the places that you are planting these seeds within the wombs of these women, they should have the responsibility of making sure that nothing grows. That is backwards. And that tells her that in many cases, if this woman opens her ears to you and opens her heart to you, she's going to trust you. She's not thinking that you're going to put her in a compromising position or that you're going to leave her. But what the manosphere is saying is marry before you carry because you really can't trust me. It makes it hard to build or rebuild relationships when without trust. Well, go ahead, sis. I'm sorry.
I was just agreeing with you and just saying, wow. I guess it's ancient for the woman, for the onus to be on the to keep herself chaste. And I thought I heard you talking about the man and the woman having the responsibility to be.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't say chaste, but these are my words.
Mm-hmm.
Being responsible for that. So I just think, is it ancient that women are the ones who are, we're made responsible for carrying that responsibility because we do carry the seed, and the men are not seen as responsible. I was going to ask, where did that shift? In popular culture, in academia, where did that shift, that somehow men were not held responsible? But would you agree it's ancient?
I think it's ancient. Like we just read in the account in Genesis, Adam gave an account. He did give an account, but he didn't take responsibility, right? So we see that since Bereshit. We see that since the beginning. He gives an account, but he didn't take responsibility. He told you what happened, the players who were there, and who made me do it, but I'm not taking responsibility for doing it. right? And we see that all throughout antiquity. There's an older video that I saw. I'm going to bring it back up. I did a few years ago, where we see all throughout time that there is a way to contracept or go against the natural nature of what sex is for. This is why I contend over the years I come to realize the moment you use it out of context, all of these other problems will arise. So both men and women, but here's the thing, um, if men can manipulate historically you out, and I'm gonna come back with another pimp video. It's a Iceberg Slim. I saw an interesting documentary I wanted to share, but that's for another day. But if he can manipulate, if he can entice you, if he can mislead you, if he can overpower you, that means to a certain degree, they're saying women are responsible and women can determine who they lay with. But once the man can overpower you in this area and he can manipulate in this area, you're still vulnerable. And this is why you have people taking things by force, because there's a vulnerability there that they know that even though they're supposed to get your agreement, there are other means and ways that they can go around it. And it makes me begin to understand, and I'm going to come to Miss Manda in the chat, understand more
Okay.
why in antiquity you see the male out front protecting the feminine, right? So that the other male who's going to respond better or be held accountable more to the man is going to have to come through. Because when he goes to the woman directly, he can negate all of those defenses. Go ahead,
Thank you
T.
so
Doctor.
much. Thank you. When you talked, another brilliant thing that I heard you say was that men are saying that women are out front, and just you just put the point forward so quickly and astutely that they keep putting us out front. If so, that's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to thank you so much, Imuna. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. You're always welcome. Thank you for the conversation. Once again, if you have any thoughts to share, feel free to do so. You already know how we do over here. We keep it clean, respectful at all times. Miss Manda, you're welcome to the panel.
Hey, Mona, can I be heard?
Yeah, you can be heard. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me on your show. Much appreciated. Um, when it comes down to the question of accountability, I was thinking on it. I was thinking that I did watch the show that you did with the uh, with the guy,
The
and
guy.
it I don't even know, so I'm gonna be as polite as I can. But it was just so very hard to watch because the question keeps coming back to, um, well, the woman needs to be held accountable. You know,
Hmm.
that the woman doesn't want to be held accountable for anything that she does, and she has the choice to choose who she want to label, like we were referring to. And I'm just over here thinking women have been held accountable for every single thing that we do. We can't
Hmm.
escape accountability,
Okay.
especially with the children.
Hmm.
Once we bring the children forward, we don't have a choice in the matter to
All
stick
right.
around, to provide a household, to make sure that they're healthy, to make
Hmm.
sure that they're fed, to make sure that they're schooled well, to make sure that they are in good company. These are all the these are just a few of the responsibilities that we
Hmm.
have as women, making sure that that shelter is above their head, making
Hmm.
sure that there's gas in the car to take them to school, making sure that our legs work right so that we can move around for them. You know,
Hmm.
it's so much that we are held accountable for. And when we fail at it, then we are looked upon as being, less than good mothers,
Hmm.
because that accountability, that responsibility is there from the beginning, and it just gets so, it's like, what more? Like, what more do you want from me? You know, like, what is going on? That whole thing, I was just watching it and I was like, this
Hmm.
dude, it's just too much. It's like this. You guys were speaking about how the young lady T Don said that. Would you agree that this is like an ancient thought process, right? And we
Right.
do understand that this is ancient. This goes all the way back to passing the blame and
Yeah.
not wanting to take responsibility for it. You know, like how when you're playing a game of dodgeball and someone hits you, and there's that one kid that be like, no, 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 you didn't hit me,
Right.
you
You
didn't,
you hit him
you
straight in the
didn't hit
gut and
me.
and missed me.
You hit him, you know you hit him. And it's like, nah, nah, that's not me. And it's hard to get them out the game to take responsibility for it. It's hard to get them out, and they get mad. Like, yo, it's just a game, but hey, this is happening in real life. You
Right.
got hit with the responsibility, and you don't want to get out the game. You don't want to get out and say, you know what, now I have to do something. Now I got to do something different. Now I got to sit on the wall for a little while. Now I got to think about what it is that I did and how I can make this better. What I can do to, to make sure that I make the better decisions going forward.
Right. I agree. It's as you stated, to say that the woman, to say that there's single motherhood in the same breath of her not being accountable, then we have to define for what. She was held accountable for bringing forth life. She's held accountable, like you said, for maintaining life. So was she not? Is she not held accountable for preventing the life? Because he kept saying something to the effect of she is responsible for the concept. She's responsible after conception and bringing the child to term. That's why I was
Yeah.
trying to options were according to your thought process. Once the seed is planted, out of turn or out of order, what do you think what agency does she have? And are those real choices that that she can make easily? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand. And I feel like these men, what they want, but they don't want to come out and say it, they want for the woman to use the option of the contraceptives, and they want her to use the option of the abortion, but they don't want to be the face of it. They want to say,
Mm,
hey, this is what you can do, but I don't want to be the face of it. Because then, if that's not the case, then there are other options for young men and older men as far as contraceptives. They can get a vasectomy. If you don't want to keep having these unwanted children and you still want to live your life having recreational activities and whatnot out here with different people, then you can do something to prevent it from happening to you. But instead of taking the appropriate measures to prevent themselves from becoming fathers or from making single mothers, they would say, they want to give it away. They want to give it away and say, "Hey, this is this is mine, but I don't want to be held accountable for it. I don't want to control my own body. I'd rather you control it for me." And I feel
or I'd
like this
rather
is an
control
issue that's being
yours.
generational. Yes,
I'd rather control yours
yes,
before I control mine, right? And that goes back
right.
to accountability and the thought processes that you have authority over someone else. So, because the authority only works one way, oftentimes we hear that means I control you, you don't control me. So, I'm not the person, like I said to him, it's affecting her body. All of your suggestions are compromising her. Everything that you're suggesting is compromising her, not you. And to you,
Mhm.
it's an easy solution. She can just, right? And this long laundry list of things that have all these different adverse effects. But if you were to bring the suggestion of, hey, you no longer are able to bring forth seed, that's just off the table. Like, what kind of suggestion is that? As a matter of fact, as
Yeah.
you're talking, keep talking. I'm gonna look up the percentage of men. Not saying that I'm advocating for this, but the percentage who actually go for vasectomies. Go ahead.
And it's a very small percentage. And I know this because um, I have a friend, and he had he had two children, not maybe, he had two children. And after his second child, he's like maybe up there in his 40s. After his second child, we were talking, and he told me that he was done. and that he was going to go and get a vasectomy. He said that none of the men in his family get it. He said that he told his uncles about it, and they looked at him crazy. Like, why would you do that? Why would you go and have them mess with you in that particular way?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, man, I am so tired of having children. I don't want to do it again. And I'm not going to wait on uh, it to happen again to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get a vasectomy. And that is the first time I've ever heard a man even bring up the thought of preventing themselves from having children. It's always been, well, if she wants to have it, then that's on her.
Mm-hmm.
Or I believe she's on birth control, you know,
Right.
something of that manner. Never the, never is it I. It's always she, or
Correct.
I believe, or I think, or she told me, you
Correct.
know,
That
it's always all of this her. And I just think this type of thought process is dangerous because then when the woman decides with her own mind that she doesn't want to put her life in danger, or if she chose to not take any type of birth control because she knows the risk, she knows the statistics behind taking birth control. If she chooses not to, and then she does bring forth a child, then it is this big thing of, well, you know, I didn't want one.
right.
You know, you know,
When
I
you went
didn't
into
want
the
this.
kitchen to
You know,
make
I have
bread.
other children.
Now I'm playing around. I said he went into the
Right.
kitchen to make bread, talking about you know I ain't want no bread. So why was you in there mixing in the bowl? If you ain't want no bread, you
You
shouldn't have
shouldn't
been
have been in
mixing
the
in the
bowl.
bowl.
You should have been in the bowl in the first place, and you shouldn't have been adding your own ingredients. You know, you shouldn't have been in there throwing stuff in there.
Putting
Now
flour
look,
and
and
salt
now
and
you're
little
upset.
water.
Yeah. But now you're upset that it's done.
Right.
You know, it's
And
done.
this is why I tried to, and it was difficult. I must say, I had to pray afterwards. I made a few phone calls, like, what
Yeah,
in the world? But it's like you're
yeah.
not connecting. I said, you're not connecting the action with the effect or the cause with the effect. And that's part of the problem. Once you divorce these two, then you can't see how they correlate. Right. And it's like, but to your point, you
Well,
can
that's
stay on. To your point, I found a little
well, that's.
vasectomy.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, well, that's you can't connect when you're not logical. When there's no logic, when there's no real logic, when there's no truth based on logic, then it's hard to connect the points. Because any logical person, it doesn't take a smart person to say that A and B, you know what I'm saying, or two plus two.
Right.
It doesn't take a genius to know this. But if you've built up a particular talking point, if you've
Yes.
built up a particular logic, then
Yes.
you have to continue in it. Because if you don't continue in it, then everything up under you will crumble
That's
and you
facts.
look like a fool.
That's
You know,
facts.
you look like a fool in front of everybody who you've been building this up with.
And that's the
You know,
danger. That's the danger
it's the
of this
danger.
whole thing. Like I was trying to tell people, the danger is if your intention, that's why I asked, what is this about? So that we can know
Uh huh.
what box to put you in. I don't want to presume
Yeah.
that I know what your end game is. I
Uh
need you to
huh.
tell me. And so this is why I approach
Tell me.
conversation, not just saying that. Like, please give me understanding so I can know how I'm going to interface with you. Um, to the vasectomy point. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Mm.
To the vasectomy point, and no, people don't run and say, I'm going to tell them to get vasectomies. The point of the conversation is, as Miss Manda just said, oftentimes the thought, and I'm saying the thought is the man wants the woman to take accountability for the woman's body, right? And doesn't want to take accountability for their own. I am not promoting contra going against conception because that comes with its own things. But to show you that the mentality is there, I pulled up an article and we're going to read it a little bit. And hopefully, because I like show and tell. So you can stay on. I'm going to.
Yeah.
You can stay on and comment if you want after I read this, and that would be all good for me.
Okay.
Listen here. So we found an article from Healthline, right? why men in the United States don't get vasectomies. Because the brother said, men, there's no birth control for men that I know of. There is. Not saying I'm advocating
You
for you to
said
do it, but there is.
mm-hmm,
Three Southern California fathers
mm-hmm.
go to the doctors together in order to call to the low attention to the low percentage of vasectomies in the United States. Getting a vasectomy isn't something men usually think to do with some of their buddies, but that's what three Southern California fathers did. Paul Diaz Basili Santagilio says you can, let me see, we could hear a little bit. Hold on. Oh, wait. Sis, mute your mic for me, please, so that we don't hear any background noise. Um,
Got it.
and John Lambridge went to the same doctor on the same day to have back vasectomies. The men have two children each. They said part of the reason for the decision was to take responsibility for their family planning after their wives had done the giving birth part. Hmm. I didn't want my wife to have to go back on birth control because I know there's a lot of issues with it. I spoke to that and then it was cast off to the side and then asked about what about obesity. I'm like, what in the world? Anyway, so then I thought I would take one for the team and I decided I would do it, Lambert told Healthline. My wife Sabrina already went through a lot giving birth, added Santel. What's his name? Santagello. And so I figured it's an easier option for men to do this. The trio also did the appointments together as a way to spotlight the low percentage of men in the United States who get vasectomies. It's not something to be ashamed of, and on the contrary, it's you being responsible. So they're selling it as responsibility because on the other side of the manosphere, responsibility is the woman stopping the birth, and on their side, responsibility is the man stopping the birth, right? They say it's not part of the US culture. A 2015 report by the United Nations showed that 1 in 10 men in the United States get vasectomies. 1 in 10. That's half the rate of men in Canada and the UK. The low percentage comes despite the fact that vasectomies are significantly easier medical operations than tubal ligations or procedures that women go through. So it's harder than tying your tubes. But now, when the baby is born, some women are getting their tubes tied in the middle of a C section, right? Vasectomies are an outpatient procedure and are performed at doctors' offices under local anesthesia. The operation generally takes less than 30 minutes, and the recovery time is usually a few days. They also have a high, quote, success rate. Sterilization procedures for women, on the other hand, are usually performed at a hospital or surgical center. There's invasive surgery that's done under general anesthesia. The recovery is longer and usually requires an overnight stay after the operation. Dr. Jesse Mills, the urologist and director of the men's clinic at the University of California, Los Angeles, who did the procedure on the three fathers, did it to make sense for men to be the ones to undergo the surgery. He said part of the reason men don't get vasectomies in the United States is that the practice is much more ingrained in our industrialized nation. In other countries, it's a part of the norm, Mills told Healthline. He noted that many United States don't even go for regular checkups. This is part of public health issue as well, he said. This is a huge part of how guys look at healthcare. Very interesting article. We see where the slant is on the article, but to the question as to what the alternative is, if it's absurd, I'll just say this. If it's absurd to ask a man to snip and ensure that no more children can come from him, is it equally of absurd to ask the woman to tie her tubes so that no more eggs could be fertilized? I'll throw that on the table. Miss Mandy, you still here? Let me know your thoughts.
Yes, I'm still here. And that's interesting because if it's such a big thing to ask a man to do that. But you know what? I believe that this goes all the way back to even, oh boy, man. Okay. I feel like because the United States is such an oppressive nation that they, I don't know. I don't want to go into that because I feel like that's so much to be built on the
Mm-hmm.
oppressiveness off the United States and why the target is always aimed towards controlling the woman's body. But that's a whole nother thing. But
Okay.
I remember
Yeah, now
you
before that.
stated
No.
something when you was reading the article about yes, that's a whole nother thing, girl. And oh boy. But I you were stating something about how that somehow when it came down to um, birth control and then he tied it into obesity. Did you see the title of you've seen the title of the YouTube and of that YouTube video, and I feel like just the mere fact of that particular title uh, made it insinuated that you were blaming uh, the men for women's obesity.
Exactly.
I didn't see anything. And I listened to the whole thing, and I listened because I'm like, this isn't anything that I believe that Imuna would would
Right.
even insinuate, right? So I listened
Exactly.
all the way until I got to the end, and I was like, you see, this is exactly why when
Mm-hmm.
we tried to collaborate
Mm-hmm.
with these men, it's like, you know what, should have never even, but you know what, it all comes with another lesson and it
Yeah.
opens up the eyes of people who you wouldn't even think, you know, it it does, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
I was
appreciate
shocked.
you having me on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I
you
was
so much
shocked
for
too.
coming
I was
on.
like, what?
I was shocked because I did the response before I left home this morning, but I didn't have an opportunity to upload it till I got to the shop. And by the
Yeah,
time I got to the shop, I see this picture, right? And I'm like, okay, that's me.
yeah,
Okay, that was the discussion. I had plans to clip it. And then I see the title. I'm like, what? What in the
yeah.
world is
Way
this?
back then.
Right? So I'm like, so then I wrote to the person, like, yo, this is part of the problem. You say people can't trust
Yeah,
you. How can I trust you to with my words if you are intent on misrepresenting me? So that is part
yeah,
of the contention. And I try not to get to do keyboard banging, but that was part of my contention in his chat was that not only did you misrepresent me, the people who are following you are adamant, yet
hmm,
they cannot prove. They
yeah,
cannot prove that I said what you asserted that I said. So then you are proving yourself to be a liar because I didn't say that.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
agree with you. It was shocking, but not really. You know what I mean? And it's just showing you more of, how far down the rabbit hole we really are. You know what I mean? We're far down the rabbit hole. We really are. And unless we
yes,
build communication, and I've worked many years in the area of communicating with men, not, when I was on other shows and hosting other things for years. And so I know how to interface with men and women in a way that the conversation could be productive. Right. So when I left that exchange, I didn't feel any way about it. You know, we left on a good note. Here comes the madness.
yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, come on with the clickbait, man. Nobody don't got no time for that, brother. That was weak. That was really weak.
It was like a slap, and I was just another time that this happens because this isn't the first time that something like that would happen, but I just didn't
Yeah.
like to see that once again because it's like, I knew that was coming. You know what I'm saying? Because once we tried to get ourselves on there with them and tried to be on one accord or tried to have a conversation, you don't even have to be on one accord, but at least to have a reasonable conversation,
Right.
you know, then it's always some little slick shots. But I get it and I understand it.
Yep.
And I was so happy to see you. Anytime you're up on a panel or whatever, I'm always happy to hear you and see you anyways, because you know, you always
Thank you,
have
sir.
something enlightening to say.
It's
And I
been a
do
while.
thank you
I've
so
been on
much.
hiatus,
It's
and I'm
been
like, now I know why I went on hiatus. The people be off the
man,
chain.
I remember hearing you on the Lions Den and stuff, and that was
Yeah.
cool.
You know,
Under the palm tree,
yeah.
all that was awesome.
All
Yeah,
that's what
I'm
I'm
a lot
saying.
of
When
time.
when I
I'm a
talk to
time.
these people, I'm like, I don't go around necessarily carrying my resume behind me, but this is you're not gonna get the reaction that you're looking for, right? I'm a little bit more
Yeah.
seasoned than that. I'm really here to really find out what's going on. But it's good to just see and show and illustrate, even for their viewers, let he who have eyes see, that these people are not really truthful. They're disingenuous. They're here for other reasons, right? And as long as people know that, then they have to choose. We can't choose for them. You know what I mean? You have to choose for yourself. So prayerfully, critical thinking is still alive, and we can,
Yeah.
the few of us who can still critically think and then don't get sucked into group think, we can find our way out of these dark places. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank you for
stopping
having
by.
me. Yes. Yes. Thank you for having me. You have a good night, okay?
You do the same. Thank you so much for those who just joined us. I'm gonna wrap it up a little bit but just to, I'm not gonna go into the single mother one, but since we are on the birth control and looking at the thought process of accountability and who feels they're accountability for what or accountable for what, we saw that 1 in 10 according to that Newsline article. So I'm gonna just do one more. I just found it while the sister was talking. And thank everybody who came on and shared their thoughts. Why are so many women getting their tubes tied? So the men who could possibly, and I'm not promoting them doing this, neither am I promoting the women, but for those who say, okay, who's accountable? We see the men as like, no, not me. What about you? And the women, this article is named from Medical Daily, extracurricular stuff at the top. The name of the article is for female sterilization. Why are so many women getting their tubes tied, and why aren't men doing the same? That's the question. um, I just want to jump down to some of the statistics. You could definitely read this. According to the Center for Disease Control of the CDC, 62% of women of reproductive age, 15 to 44, were currently using some form of contraception against conception, right? Between 2011 and 2013, 62% of these women, 25.1%, relied on female sterilization as their contraceptive method. So for the men, it was 1 in 10. For the women, according to this stat, and we would have to go over there, I probably click the link, but 25.1% relied on female sterilization. 1/4 versus 1/10. This number may seem high, especially since it excludes sexually active women over the age of 44, for whom sterilization makes more sense due to their approaching menopause. A further breakdown of the CDC's data reveals this logic may have some basis, since 44.2% of the women in the highest age bracket, 35 to 44, use some form of sterilization as birth control, and 44% of those went with female sterilization rather than having their partner undergo procedure. So when he said that the women are not taking account, in this part, we're talking about the responsibility to stopping conception at a higher rate. Women are taking accountability or responsibility for stopping conception. Because as Sister Manager said, historically, when conception does take place, when the male doesn't want it to, the blame is shifted onto her. I thought you were on birth control. Why? How did you let this happen? And if he's using some prophylactic, it's usually, oh, it slipped off. That's the extent of the excuse. Or maybe you poked a hole in it, right? That's the extent of that. The choice to undergo sterilization did not, however, correlate solely with age. Women with less education were also more likely to rely on their own sterilization than a partner's vasectomy. And women relying on Medicaid or other state sponsored plan were more likely than those with private insurance to use female sterilization as contraceptive. This is happening. Sterilization may be the right choice for many women, but the disparity between male and female sterilization is stark. While 25.1% of women using contraceptive relied on female sterilization, only 8.2, and we saw 1 in 10 in the other article, percent of women relied on male sterilization. Oh, this is talking about the women's position. In other words, only a third as many women relied on male sterilization than on female. They're going to go in, but point being, usually when I see articles like this and I want to see the data for myself, I just click on the link. That's why it's hyperlinked. And they're going to take you to where they got this information from. So usually when I say, where did you get this information from? All it does is click a link. click the link and drop it in the box, drop it in the chat. So, because usually, and I know people are not reading. This is 15 pages, and this is a short one. Who's going through the 15 pages? The majority of people in the YouTube universe are not going into 15 pages and going through the reference and going back to the data. They're just pulling one number that supports their stance. That's like me running around saying only 1 in 10 men get, and just take that one stance that's going to bolster my point and running around with up a flagpole. So, my point is this: if we can do a bit more better in the way we're dispersing and disseminating this information, that would be helpful. This has been an interesting discussion. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm gonna go over this. I'm gonna go read this a little later. I'm gonna keep it up on my screen, and then we'll come back. I have to come back and talk about the baby back thing because they took my nice video off. I don't know which one of the videos that I showed that they didn't like, but clearly they didn't like one of them because somebody uh, took it off. But we're gonna continue this discussion. We're gonna go into single motherhood. Um, We're going to see how the numbers that everybody keeps saying from the 70s to now, single motherhood exploded. We're going to look at that because anytime you see something happening, somebody reads numbers, right? For instance, you have a business or you have a YouTube channel, right? The other day, I'll give a real life example and then I'll go. The other day, I saw the numbers on a very old video that I did spike. I'm curious, as you could say. I wanted to know who sent me the headphones. So I'm curious, right? So, and I'll go look for the littlest piece of data. So I saw a spike in one video. And I'm like, what in the world? No, before I saw the spike, I saw a lot of activity on one of my articles. And I'm on my website. I'm like, where's all this activity coming from? Right? I'm like, what in the world? What is that? So I'm curious. So when you see numbers, my point is the numbers tell a story. Numbers tell a story. If you bring numbers without accounting for them or telling the story, you're not doing the numbers justice. So real true life, just like I did with the health phones, I'm like, this is weird. So I go back and look and I'm like, okay. So I come over to my YouTube and I see a spike in a certain video. It was the slave hair chair video. I don't know if you remember that from years ago, the Lev Project, where there was some slave hair in the chair. Anyway, apparently another woman found some hair in the chair and she went searching on the internet looking for other people who may have had the same experience. And she found her way to my site and then the video got sucked back into the algorithm. So numbers in and of themselves, if they're not in context, they're not going to give you anything, but they tell a story if you allow them to, right? So that's my issue with people quoting statistics just to make it seem like they finessing everybody and they won't tell you where they got it from. Is it census, CDC? Is it statista.com? Who took this study? Who did it? Who did the study? You know what I mean? Anyway, Sweet Tea Dawn, there's a very popular YouTube family channel where the husband is having his vasectomy reversed because they've decided they want more children. I'm also not ever advocating for a one size fits all. Continued solution for health and wellness. I just wanted to note that what seems like a sacrificial act. Right. Exactly. I don't know how many times I said it. So please, everybody, I said it a number of times. This is not advocating, but what is not being advocated for the man is being advocated for the woman, right? Go ahead and tie your tubes to make it easier. If it wasn't being advocated for, then how did she get into position where exponentially she's doing it more than he is? There had to be a conversation going on within the family. And again, yes, some of this stuff is difficult to reverse. You don't know what the future holds, right? So with that said, nature has already given us after a certain time, nature does what it does. But that's just my thoughts. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Like I said, we'll come back and have more discussions like this. If you're enjoying it, put the thumbs up, the like button, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And we'll be back again. All right, everybody have a blessed day.